Hello everybody, I come to you sunburned and tired at 9:30 at night on a Sunday. Not my usual time for filming for a weekly wrap-up, but I spent most of the day outside, thus the sunburn, repainting just a part of my front porch. And as often happens with home improvement projects, it has snowballed from what I thought was going to be a short one-day project to multiple evenings of work because I've started and I can't stop now. It's just, no going back now. However, it was an extremely productive reading week for me, and I have to apologize in advance to Tara because I was supposed to be reading Apex by Ramez Naam with her, and instead I was strangely compelled. I could not stop myself from binge rereading 2 entire quartets by Tamora Pierce. I hadn't read anything by Pierce since Battle Magic came out 2013, so like 3 years ago, and I haven't reread any of my favorites by her in 6 or 7 years, so it was time for a great rereading. So I'm going to talk about those 2 quartets first because I plan on doing separate overview videos of them when I have more time for filming. So first, I reread the Immortals quartet. These books are Wild Magic, Wolf Speaker, Emperor Mage, and The Realms of the Gods. This is the first series I ever read by Pierce, and I counted them as my favorite books and like my favorite series by Pierce. And then I reread them and I realized that I don't have that intense connection with the main character anymore. It's just a matter of identifying with the character, and I no longer do because I am not my younger self. I am not young anymore. I'm not the same age as the main character. I still have wonderful things to say about these books, which I will go into more detail later when I do an overview, but it wasn't as impressive as I thought it was going to be upon rereading. I also reread the Song of the Lioness quartet, which is the first series that Pierce wrote and published. It's still her most popular series. These books are Alanna, the First Adventure, and The Hand of the Goddess, The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, and Lioness Rampant. I actually loved these books even more upon rereading them. I was surprised at how well they held up for me, especially because I've heard some other people reading them for the first time as an adult and not being as impressed with them as I remembered myself being when I read them for the first time. Yeah, I still really love them. Both of these series are set in her medieval fantasy world in the Kingdom of Tortall. These books, whoa, I just threw a bookmark everywhere. These books follow Alanna beginning when she is 10 years old. She disguises herself as a boy in order to become a knight. She becomes a knight and has adventures. This series comes after it, and it follows a young teenage girl named Dane who has a wild magical gift that she has a bond with animals and she can communicate with animals. And she comes to Tortall, she makes friends, and she becomes a major player in Tortall's war against the Carthaki Emperor and his allies, the immortal beasts, who were once imprisoned and kept separate from the human world, but Ozorn has helped them break free and they are attacking humans now. Once again, I will talk about these books more and the series in more depth in separate videos when I have more time. Another book that I read was Between Two Thorns by Emma Newman. This is the first book in the Split World series. I have the first 3 books, and I buddy read this first one with Maya from Maya Reads, which was fun. I think this was kind of more Maya's thing than mine, but I still really enjoyed it. It was just a fun, light read with some darker, more serious elements in it as well. As the title of the series suggests, it's about the split worlds, the human mundane world, which is mirrored in the Nether. The Nether is a version of our world caught between the mundane world and Exilium, where the Fae lords and ladies have been exiled. In the Nether, there live these families who are bound to the Fae, and while they live in the Nether, they are immortal and ageless, and they do the bidding of the Fae. The Fae are exiled and not supposed to have any influence on the human world, but clearly they use their human pawns from the Nether to, concoct their plots and have influence in the human world. The series mainly follows Kathy, a woman from one of the Nether families. The Nether is caught in the past. It's trapped in an almost Victorian era where women have no rights, and Kathy wants to have an education, she wants to go to university, and she doesn't want to get married off, so she runs away. But at the beginning of the book, her family finds her, and her family's Fae patron binds her to him again, and she has to return home, where she becomes involved in further plots and is supposed to marry a young man who she really doesn't want to marry. I enjoyed this book quite a bit. It is absolutely nothing like Planetfall by Emma Newman. Well, it's fantasy, not science fiction for one, but I think Newman has become an even stronger writer and plotter since writing these books. But mostly it's just a very different type of story with a lot of the Fae Victorian influences, which I did find to be enjoyable. My biggest criticism is that I thought that the theme of women's rights and how oppressive Kathy's life is in the Nether was almost a little heavy-handed. It was really hammered on, and there's some awful things that Kathy has to go through. I think it's all for a purpose, but at a certain point I was like, okay, I get it, this is awful, and it's even worse that Kathy got away but is being dragged back into it. I wanted it to be not quite so hitting me over the head with how awful women's rights were in the Nether. The plot of this book is wrapped up pretty neatly, so it can kind of stand alone on its own, but there are still many more open questions about what's going on in the split worlds and of course what's going to happen to Kathy, so I am very excited to continue reading the series. The other book that I read that I finished was The Elvish Writing Systems of J.R.R. Tolkien by Matthew D. Coombs. This is a book that I got because I backed the Kickstarter prior to Christmas, so it took about 6 months to get to me, and it is about the Elvish writing systems of J.R.R. Tolkien. It is not about the languages, it is actually about the alphabets and the writing systems and the individual glyphs. The whole point of this book is to teach you how Tolkien built the scripts in order to write the Elvish languages to support the history of the languages that he was creating. And then once you know how he created the glyphs and the scripts, you can adapt them to write any language that you want, not just the Elvish languages they were created to write out, which is very interesting to me personally. Tolkien's scripts and languages were incredibly influential to me when I was a young teenager. I actually went on to try creating my own languages and scripts when I was a teenager. I wish that I had had this when I was a kid, because I really only had Ruth Knoll's book, which I would go get, but I'm too lazy to, but that's like very recognizable. But it's actually more about the languages, syntax, grammar, vocabulary, with just smaller sections on the scripts. And this is, like, I think probably one of the definitive guides to writing these scripts. It doesn't actually go into how to form the letters, like how to write it if you have a calligraphy pen, but I think you can probably figure it out. It's way more interesting to know things like the fact that they are phonetic scripts rather than orthographic, which can really influence how you want to adapt them to writing any language. This isn't necessarily a book that you would just sit down and read through. It's intended to be more of a reference that you dip in and out of. You read the sections that are relevant to your interests, but I just read it from beginning to end because I wanted to. Because this is independently published and it didn't go through the usual professional publishing route, it lacks some finesse in the editing. There are definitely copy editing errors and such. I noticed a lot of mistakes in the text, like missing words or definitely a repetition that should have been deleted or something. That is something that I would say don't be put off by, because the actual meat, the content, is well researched and well put together. It is more scholarly, academic in tone rather than friendly, casual how-to guide, which may also influence whether you want to read the entire thing or just use it as a reference guide. Didn't bother me too much though. Those are the 10 things that I read this past week. I am really tired and I'm sorry if I made a hash out of this, but I will be talking more about the books by Tamora Pierce. I'm going to be very busy for like the next week. I have commitments and stuff to do during the week, and this coming weekend I am actually from Friday to Sunday going to be on a trip to see Bree from Stories from the Shelf. We are going to a signing by Lois McMaster Bujold at the really awesome science fiction bookstore that I went to with Bree last summer when I visited her for the first time. So I'm going to be on the road and busy with Bree and stuff on the days that I usually would be filming for the week that comes after that. So if videos are sparse, it's because I don't have time to film or edit. I actually have videos already filmed that I haven't edited, which is a position I have never been in before. I usually edit things pretty quickly, and I haven't had time and haven't been able to make time with all the things I want to be doing. So until I return with my next video, I hope you have a fantastic time, happy reading, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.